let's talk about, though, what is happening with these rare earths, as I believe Trump called it, which was hilarious. Let's talk about this. People do love to talk about Ukrainian agency. So where is this Ukrainian agency? What is missing from that conversation?
Yeah, I think one of the most valuable things with Trump, I think one of the most valuable things about him is that he says the quiet part loud. Trump is basically saying, give us your minerals." Okay? That's what he's saying. That's a nice country you got there. Time to pay up for us. Okay? He's not covering it. The thing is, the blob, the empire, however you want to call it, that's exactly what we've been trying to do for a long time. We sent Mikhail Saakashvili, to Odessa. Ukraine also was always at two goals. One is to get it out from Russia's control, and two is to loot it. So we tried to take over Odessa, which is a extraordinarily lucrative port. We are now just Trump is just being honest. He's saying, give us your shit. That's what he's saying. Okay. But the amazing part is how so many in the blob, so many people who squeal about Ukraine being independent and Ukrainians having agency and Ukrainians having sovereignty, so many people who squeal about that all the time are like perfectly on board with Trump. Are like, yeah, yeah, give us some money. Okay. So I mean, what he's saying is he's saying the quiet part loud. He's saying the same thing that really the Atlantic Council is saying. Okay, he's just doing it a lot more crudely.
Yeah.
And you prepared some screenshots for us, Lev, to contrast the way that people are talking about Ukrainian agency and sovereignty, and also Ukrainian resources. So let's take a look. First, we have a nice compare and contrast of the great senator from Delaware, Chris Coons. Putin had two goals in invading Ukraine: robbing its territory and robbing its sovereignty by preventing them from joining NATO. European allies are right to call an emergency meeting about the Hegseth-Vance surrender plan. Allowing Russia to conquer independent states emboldens aggressors like China and makes Americans less safe. Okay, those are all very lofty ideals there. Let's see another thing that he had to say. Democratic Senator Chris Coons told CNBC Saturday that the deal could be a positive for both sides, provided it made security assurances for Kyiv. If this is an investment opportunity where American companies and other companies from Europe would be involved in mining and processing so that we can be independent of Chinese sources of these strategic minerals, and if this helps deepen and strengthen our partnership to help ensure the security of Ukraine going forward, that would be a positive thing.
I mean, can I just say one thing real quickly? Speaking of Trump and exploitation and all that stuff, as soon as the Maidon revolution, which was backed by the Obama administration, of course, and Victoria Nuland kind of headed that. After that coup/revolution was effected in February, and actually, 11 years ago, Biden was kind of was the point man for the Obama administration. He was kind of the American viceroy. So on the one hand, then suddenly you had like an American banker from America put in as finance minister. You had the IMF dictating. So that's one version of exploitation. Then you have the vice president's son, hired by the largest natural gas company, Burisma, paid to join their board of directors $83,000 a month, in a country where the
has extensive knowledge of Ukraine and oil.
Yeah. Well, this is a country where the average wage, especially after the revolution and the American finance minister moved in, dropped to roughly, let's say, $250 a month. So he's paid $83,000 a month to tell his, to get his dad to make sure that the government lays off Burisma, because Burisma is involved in all kinds of shady shit, like all major companies there. And what did Daddy do? Daddy eventually forces Poroshenko, the president, to fire the prosecutor general who was heading a case against Burisma. I mean, so yeah, everybody's exploiting the place, but they don't talk that talk, and it does hurt when you talk that talk. In fact, it is destabilizing. It's frightening to the governing class. And it's red meat for the MAGA base to hear that, because the MAGA base hates Ukraine too. They see, what Biden did is, and von der Leyen and all of them, they made the Ukraine cause and their support for Ukraine as this is how we're going to unite everybody in our countries around us and push to the side those that we consider marginal or basically MAGA and the versions of MAGA in other countries. It was a way they thought that they were going to unify their power in their countries through Ukraine's blood, basically. And so, yeah, Ukraine gets exploited many different ways, but they get pretty words from sort of the liberal centrists, and they get raw words from Trump.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
Speaking of pretty words,
should we move on to Dickinson?
He's got very pretty words.
Okay, so tell us who this guy is, Dickinson, and then we're going to show what he had to say.
This guy is a Brit who is part of the Atlantic Council, which is funded. It was funded by Burisma. It was funded by a whole bunch of, I'm not sure if it's funded by them anymore, but it was funded by military contractors, defense contractors.
Bonesaw in Saudi Arabia was a funder.
Yes,
you know?
yes. Our friends are tolerant democracies in the Middle East and things like that. So this is the Atlantic Council, which is basically an advocacy arm of NATO. And this person is part of them.
All right, so let's see what he had to say. And this was from January 2022.
There's a lot of talk about the geopolitics. There's a lot of talk about Putin, about what Putin wants. There's a lot of talk about the actions of the West, of NATO. I think fundamentally, if we step back and look at this whole crisis, at the very heart of this crisis, we have the Ukrainian people. It is their will and their agency here that's driven this whole thing.
Now let's hear what he had to say a couple months later in October. So Elon Musk tweeted, Ukraine, Russia, peace, redo elections of annexed regions under UN supervision. Russia leaves if this is will of the people. And so Dickinson tweets, Elon Musk seems unaware that Ukrainian sovereignty is not up for discussion or that Russia is committing genocide in areas currently under the Kremlin's control. Okay, now let's see. Dickinson.
Ukraine sovereignty not up for discussion. Yeah. Not up for discussion. Right. Yeah. Not on Dickinson's watch.
Not on
Dickinson's watch.
Yeah. Let's see what he has to say in February this year.
This is to Politico.
Okay, so this bargain will come at a cost to Ukraine, but it's likely one worth paying. That's their writing. Here's what he actually says. So I'm going to quote him now, right? It would mean a lot less mineral wealth in future, said Dickinson, but I doubt anyone is very concerned about that. Compared to the alternative of the country being wiped off the map entirely, it looks like a good deal indeed. Most Ukrainians certainly seem to view it as perhaps distasteful, but ultimately a no-brainer.
As far as I understand it, and I actually checked with people, there have not really been polls about this issue because it's so new.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it's really interesting that for a person who really cares about the agency of Ukrainians people, he puts upon his frail shoulders the burden of deciding for Ukraine whether to sell its minerals and whether that is a good thing or not. This is somebody who's not Ukrainian at all.
It's really enraging. It's so enraging.
I mean, and this is why Trump is refreshing. He really is. He's refreshing. He's refreshing because he doesn't hide behind shit like Ukraine's sovereignty. Elon Musk is unaware of Ukraine's sovereignty, that it's not for sale. He doesn't say that. He says, give me your fucking minerals.
Right.
Which is, I don't know. I kind of find that to be a little bit more refreshing than people who say Ukraine's sovereignty is not for sale. And oh yeah, minerals, that's going to be fine. And Ukrainians are fine with this. Look, based on what?
Right. Well,
based on what you and your Atlantic Council friends think? Like,
someone actually put this in the comments. Is this something that should be championed because he says the quiet part out loud?
Yes, absolutely. You should say what you mean.
Right, but not what he's doing, right?
The question. How is that even a question?
Obviously, Lev is against all of this exploitation of the country he's from.
Right, right.
What he's saying is, if your whole goal is exploitation using Ukraine, say it out loud.
Say it out loud so people are aware of it.
That you have these lofty goals.
I mean, what is the alternative? I mean, that question is kind of strange. What is the alternative? No, you know what? It's actually better to say lies and to say things that you do not mean. That is a better thing for the world and everybody in it. Of course, it's better to say the quiet part loud.